When people talk about ancient Chinese dynasties, certain images quickly come to mind. The Han Dynasty stood strong and tough. The Tang Dynasty was famous for its glittering golden age. The Song Dynasty brought extraordinary wealth and refined everyday culture. But among all of China's major unified dynasties, none is more puzzling, contradictory, and misunderstood than the Yuan Dynasty. People see it in totally opposite ways. Some see it as an unstoppable superpower with unmatched military strength and enormous territory. Others view it as fragile, short-lived, gone almost as quickly as it arrived. So here is the puzzle that baffles everyone. Why did the dynasty with China's biggest ever territory, the most far-reaching trade, and the widest connection to the world last barely 90 years after unifying the country? Normally, the bigger the state, the more stable it is, the stronger it lasts. But the Yuan flips that rule completely. It was powerful enough to reshape the world, yet fragile beyond belief. Most people blame wars, foreign enemies, or natural disasters, but the real reason lies deeper in the dynasty's own DNA. From day one, this Yuan dynasty carried a contradiction it could never resolve. The emperor wore two completely different heads. Two conflicting systems of rule were forced into one country. This unique duality gave the Yuan achievements no other dynasty could match. Yet it also planted the fatal seeds for its rapid collapse. Today, we are going all the way from start to finish to unpack this strongest, most open yet shortest-lived mystery, the Great Yuan. A lot of people got two things mixed up, the Mongol Empire and the Yuan Dynasty. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings about this whole story. It started with Genghis Khan. He led the Mongol tribes across Asia and Europe, building the legendary Mongol Empire. So massive, it's hard to even picture. But because it was too huge, too diverse, and had no real center, after Genghis died, the empire splintered into several independent khanates. Each ruled its own turf, no longer answering to one boss. That's where Kublai Khan steps in. Kublai didn't waste energy fighting for distant lines in Europe or West Asia. He focused everything on China, the heartland. He knew one thing clearly: Mongols were brilliant at conquering, but terrible at running a big, settled farming civilization. If he ruled China purely by Mongol customers, the cities, the economy, the whole system would fall apart. But if he threw away Mongol traditions and adopted Chinese rules completely, every Mongol noble would turn against him, and he would lose his throne. So Kublai made a choice that could define the dynasty for a century. Run two systems step by step. Keep Mongol institution to satisfy the nobles. Keep Chinese institution to keep society running smoothly. It was a clever move that put the Yuan on the top of the world instantly. But it also corrected the foundation from the very beginning. You would think two systems together means the best of both worlds. Histories tell us different story. When two sets of rules operate with one nation, they rarely complement each other perfectly. They constantly clash. So, what did that clash look like during the Yuan's golden age? Let's breast that first. I want to make one thing crystal clear. Yuan's openness was nothing like the Tang's. The Tang was open and welcomed visitors from all over, but its famous overland trade routes kept getting cut off by border conflicts and warfare. Trade flourished in peaceful eras and shut down during times of fighting. It was never reliably stable. The Song, on the other hand, had amazing maritime trade, but no land routes at all. The overland pass was blocked. Only only the Yuan achieved what no other ancient Chinese dynasty did. Both land and sea roads open and stable all the time. Why? Because most of Eurasia was under Mongol control. No rival states, no constant wars, no checkpoint chaos on the Silk Road. From China, you could travel overland all the way to Europe and the Middle East safely, also to Southeast Asia and across the Indian Ocean. For the first time, the entire Eurasian trading network was truly centered on China. That gave the Yuan two unique achievements. First, the largest territory in Chinese history. The Yuan united glass lines, Old Chinese hard lines, Northeast territories, and vast southwestern regions and one government. The borders that later Ming and Qing dynasties inherited, they all came from the Yuan's blueprint. Second, a genuinely globalized ancient China. Merchants, doctors, craftsmen, scholars, and travelers poured into China from all over the world. New foods, medicines, astronomy, and technologies flooded in. One of the most famous visitors was Marco Polo. He came to Beijing and saw with his own eyes the clean streets, busy markets, advanced paper money, and vibrant city life. Back in Europe, cities were cramped, dirty, and poor. Yuan of China outmatched European societies by an enormous margin in urban development, commerce, and overall civilization. When Marco Polo went home and wrote his book, it gave the West its first real detailed look at the wealthy, advanced East. And that planted a seed for centuries. Europeans dreamed of reaching the East. So remember, Tang's openness was regional friendly neighbors exchanging gifts. Yuan's openness was continental, the whole Eurasian landmass deeply connected, totally different league. Sea and land wide open, goods and people from everywhere, unbeatable territory, booming economy. Sounds like a perfect dynasty, right? But if everything was so great, why did folk culture take a huge turn? And what did that turn reveal about the hidden cracks? In traditional Chinese dynasties, studying, taking exams, and becoming an official was the only way for ordinary people to rise. The Tang and Song valued the imperial exam system highly. No matter your birth, if you were smart and worked hard, you could join the government and help run the country. That's why scholars were respected and education flourished. But under the Yuan, everything changed. To keep Mongol nobles in power and prevent Han Chinese officials from getting too strong, the Yuan suspended the civil service exams for a very long time. For countless educated men, that meant their only path upward was gone. They had spent their whole life studying, but now they would never get a government post. So these brilliant, frustrated scholars had no choice but to go down to the streets, into the markets, and mix with the common people. And because they no longer wrote stiff, official, highbrow essays, they started creating works that ordinary folks could understand and enjoy: stories, songs, plays. Yuan opera, Yuanqu, blossomed during this period. It used plain language, vivid stories, strong rhythms. You could think it, act it, and tales with it. Writers like Wang Hanqi became masters of this new folk literature. These works weren't for emperors or ministers. They were for the people. They captured everyday life, human emotions, and the voices of common crowd. The Yuan's opera explosion laid the very foundation of Chinese population literature. The novels, dramas, and folk tales we loved from the Ming and Qing, they all grew out of this Yuan-era soil. The Yuan gave rise to an explosion of folk art and popular culture, but the more vibrant the culture, the more it highlighted the chaos at the top. Under the shiny surface, the internal conflicts were getting worse by the day. Every problem that brought down the Yuan traced back to one root. Mongol governance and traditional Chinese governance could not coexist. They clashed non-stop. Let me break it down in 3 layers so you really see the mess. First, clashing power structure. Mongol nobles were used to privilege and handouts. As a Mongol Khan, the emperor had to constantly give away money, land, and goods to keep their support. But traditional Chinese rule stressed light taxes, steady revenue, and people's welfare. Two completely opposite logics, one that needed endless spending to reward nobles. The other needed restrained taxation to keep society stable. From the very start, the treasury was always stretched thin, never balanced. Second, collapsing paper money economy. With the treasury constantly short, the government resorted to printing paper money like crazy without enough gold or silver to back it up. More and more notes, less and less value. Hyperinflation hit, price skyrocketed, people's savings became worthless, and everyday life got harder every year. Third, natural disasters made worse by human corruption. In the later years, widespread floods and droughts ravaged the country. Farmland was destroyed, harvest failed, and millions were left homeless. This should have been the moment for the government to step in, relieve food and hope. But official corruption was widespread. Officials at very level schemed off aid supplies, and ordinary people got almost nothing. People faced no food, no hope, and nowhere to turn. The biggest territory, the richest trade, the world-connected superpower, dragged it down step by step, not by outside enemies, but by its own unresolved institutional friction and cascading crises. When people have no room to survive, rebellion explodes. Massive peasant uprisings broke out all over China. Warlords and rebel armies rose everywhere. The whole country fell into chaos. Worse still, at the moment of greatest danger, the Yuan didn't unite to save itself. The Mongol allies turned on each other. Power struggles, infighting, backstabbing. With enemies at the gates, the court was fragmented, weak, and wasting its own strength. The once invincible Mongol, after a century internal erosion, had lost its edge completely. Finally, the Ming army broke through Dadu, the Yuan capital. The Yuan's rule over the central China ended. The remaining Mongol forces retreated back to the northern steppes. After roughly 90 years of unified rule over China, the Yuan Dynasty was finished. Let's compare three dynasties side by side, and you will see exactly what made the Yuan unique. The Song reshaped Chinese daily life, art, taste, urban culture, deeply influencing how modern Chinese people live today. The Tang built a brilliant East Asian sphere, flourishing exchanges with neighboring countries. The Yuan did what none of the after and earlier Chinese dynasty could. First, created China's largest territory, setting the boundaries for centuries to come. Second, it was the only Asian Chinese dynasty that kept both land and sea roads stably open, not regional but across the entire Eurasian continent. Tang's openness was local, Yuan's openness was global, but the Yuan also left us the most sobering lesson. It has the ultimate strength, the widest line, the most inclusive vision. Yet because two systems refused to merge, it tore itself apart from within and died young. It achieved unbelievable greatness, yet remained incredibly fragile. Brilliance unmatched, lifespan fleeting. That's the one-of-a-kind, unrepeatable Great Yuan Dynasty. Alright, let's quickly go over the Chinese terms we used today. Yuan Chao, the Yuan Dynasty, founded by Kublai Khan. Hu Bili, Kublai Khan, the first Yuan emperor. Marco Polo, Marco Polo, the famous European traveler. Yuan Qu, Yuan opera, the classic folk drama that thrived under the Yuan. Okay, China Voice, China Stories. If you enjoyed this video, learned something new, and had fun with Chinese words, that makes me really happy. Feel free to leave a comment and tell me what topics you would like to watch. I will keep bringing you more great quality content. Thank you for listening. See you next time. Bye bye.